On my top left is Dr. Anand Samuel. He's the Vice-Chancellor at VIT University in Vellore. Next to him on my screen, that is Sunita Karar ma'am. She's the Dean of the Management School and Director ICT at MIT ADT University in Maharashtra. Next to her is Mrs. Nishtha Shukla. She's the trustee and a director at Shulini University in Himachal Pradesh. Next to him is, again, this is all my screen, is Jayasankar Variyar sir. He's the Pro Vice-Chancellor at GD Goenka University. And I think he's also spent a lot of time at VIT University. And on the screen currently is Dr. Nilesh Khare from Jagran Lake City University. He is a professor of strategy and the dean of their management school at Jagran Lake City University. I'd like to once again say thanks to all the panelists for taking out their time. I think this is one of the most star-studded panel we've had. So thank you so much. So the topic of today is essentially locking down admissions during the lockdown. So very quickly prefacing the topic. So quickly, I am Upneet Grover. I'm the founder of GetMyUni. GetMyUni is one of India's largest admissions platforms. We help colleges and universities with marketing, branding, and admissions. We drive over 10,000 enrollments to more than 200 universities in India. So given that this is our core business, we've been hearing a lot of universities reaching out to us and talking about, hey, this is unprecedented. This has never been seen before, and there is a very, very evident, I won't say struggle, but an indecision / challenge around admissions at this point in time. So we would spend the first 10-15 minutes on discussing the challenges, or probably 20 minutes, and we'll then move on to solutioning. And we'll then move on to the questions and answers which our audience would have. Still, I'll move to Jayasankar sir from GD Goenka. So one of the other challenges, especially for a lot of large private universities, and in fact, that's a challenge for us also, the application process or getting admissions is twofold. One is you generate inquiries, right, of students. And the second part is nurturing and converting these students to applications and then admissions. So at this point in time, I just spoke with Anand sir on the initial generation bit, but on the nurturing bit, what we learned was that running an academic, let's say for example, call center, having teams in office is till now was considered the holy grail of efficiency, right? Especially for operationally driven businesses. So now suddenly that you see that a large part of your team, especially for example, the academic call center, these are people who are now working from home. So how is that working out for you? And please feel free to talk about any major challenge that you yourself are uniquely facing at this point in time, which was kind of not envisaged before the lockdown.
The lead generation that we have is directed to our call centers. And right. The call centers are functioning from their homes. Right. We have a method of monitoring, and that is continuing.
Right.
Now, the bigger problem is actually, for example, the students sort of still trying to decide where they want to go.
True.
And where they want to travel. All these issues are bigger problems.
Right.
So what we find that, if you look at the data that is there out there, like say India specific, but if you look at it for our class of students, many of them actually travel internationally, etc. You find that they are actually deferring their international travel.
True.
So that, in a sense, it cuts for a brand like GD Goenka, it cuts both ways. One, we are able to attract better clientele of those students who are, currently planning to go abroad. We may be able to attract.
Right.
The next part is that, we also have students from all over the country.
Right.
Now, with all these stresses on transportation and lockdown, etc., that again becomes a negative for us.
True. True.
So that, multiple things.
Yeah.
It's not easy to take a call on one way or
Yes.
the other. But the
So,
bigger thing is we need to continuously communicate with them. That's how you do the nurturing.
right.
We
Right.
continuously communicate.
So, quick question and interesting point you mentioned about study abroad, and I see a lot of companies in our space who are kind of also talking about. So there are two. So, for example, let's say there's a company who sends students abroad, very similar to us. They are still maintaining that no, students are still very bullish. If not in the fall, they'll go there in spring. Whereas a lot of people in our space are saying that, hey, we can convert a study abroad student today to a top tier private university. This is my thesis, and help me correct this, is I believe that a student who wants to go abroad, unless it's an Ivy League university, if it's a private university, which is not an Ivy League university, the decision is more driven by the fact of immigration. Ki, bhai, I want to go abroad. So do you think, because we get a lot of that traffic and we are not still trying to divert it to Indian universities, but are you genuinely seeing this trend of students wanting to go abroad are now okay with studying in India, or this is also a trend that you've heard but haven't experienced yourself?
No, it's a trend that we have got. So for example, if you look at the QS study that was put out last week, it
Right.
indicates that about 60% of the students have now decided that
Hmm.
they will at least defer their admissions by 1 year.
Okay.
So that's an opportunity for big brands
Right.
because we actually would be able to tap into a sort of a better peer group, possibly, if
Right.
we do. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is that actually the students that we get will actually change because of this epidemic. Now that is a bigger problem for us. I mean,
Okay.
for all of us. It's not just I would say GD Goenka, but
Right.
at any university, it's not just the admissions alone, but because the profile of students have changed, that might actually affect our pedagogy and things like that. So
So could you care to elaborate there? That's an interesting point you make around the cadre of students or the type of students. Could you give me an example of what you're referring to there?
no, for example, I mean, if universities which actually get a pan-India population,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
getting them, for example, an IIT, they may
Right.
obviously take the cream.
Right.
Now, issue is that because admissions are deferred, the fact that your 12 standard marks are exams have not happened, the JEE mains have not happened. Now, if a student, finally the anxiety, a student who is in the 12th standard has a lot of anxiety.
Right.
They will possibly choose different options now compared to what they would have done in a non-pandemic situation. So
Right.
that really changes our profile. Now, I have talked only about the top thing,
Yeah.
but the kind of students we get may be more localized, for example. Maybe they are not willing to travel as much. Those are things which will actually end up, make a difference in the way we conduct our courses.
Right. Right. Fair enough. So, what are some of the innovative or new things that you are doing at this point in time to hedge against whatever has hurt the admission? So, for example, let's say offline consultants, which used to be a large input into some of the large universities, have been rendered ineffective, right? So, how do we hedge? How do universities hedge for that? As you would see, newspapers used to be a very large medium for branding. Newspapers are going completely empty. One is, of course, out of the fear that, hey, who will spend at this point in time? So all these traditional channels of marketing, which have been rendered relatively useless, how are you hedging for those in your bid to reach out to students at this point in time?
I think the main way, most base that we do is that we have a large, more number of digital events,
Right.
by which we communicate with our target students.
Right.
And we also have given a strong push to the digital marketing. And top of all that, we also make sure that we do one-to-one of phone calls, online meetings. So a lot of counseling and nurturing takes place in that. So these are some of the key ways we do it. But I think digital events is proved to be a big. This is practically non-existent. So if you look at many of the leading universities, now they have started going in a big way in having one kind of digital event or the other. And that actually helps in branding and getting leads.
So on a digital event, let's say today or next week, you want to plan a webinar. So planning the webinar is the easy part, or getting the content out. How do you get the distribution or access to students?
So, that we actually go through some of our consultants and things.
Okay.
So, I mean, the target audience, and we obviously have some inorganic leads.
Okay.
So, those students who are interested in our university, for example.
Okay.
And of course, word of mouth spread, and because we are using social media also in a big way. So these things always help.
Sure. And quick question. So I've been to GD Goenka University personally. I'd met Nipun sir when I was there. So one of the top draws, I would imagine, is the infrastructure at your university, right? Yes. So how are you kind of showing that to the student, right? Have you invested in any virtual tour solution or something?
We do have a virtual tour solution. Right. And we are shortlisting some other ideas right now, which are, but we definitely, as you said, infrastructure is our major selling point, and also the fact accessibility is another key point. Accessibility is not going to go away. Right? We are close to the airport, we are close to the railway station. All these things are there. Campus is, of course, the prime thing, and we are working around that. We have already got a virtual tour that's there on the website, and we keep communicating to the parents who are interested. And we will figure out something to convince them.
Sure. How much of ADT budget is on digital versus other mediums? Where is GD Goenka at? I know Nipun sir is very bullish.
Roughly between 20 to 30%.
Okay. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you, Anand sir. Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you, Nitya ma'am. Thank you, Jayasankar sir, and thank you, Sunita ma'am, for your time.
Thank you.
Hope to interact with you again, and thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all. Thank you all, the participants.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Hope you guys had fun while.
It was very informative.
I hope we all learned something.
Yeah.
Very much.